I'm Jaelyn Quintana, the SDSU Sheep Extension Field Specialist, joined today with Dr. Chris Bakker, who is the Extension Meat Specialist. And Chris, you guys talked a little bit about this morning, you and Dr. Blair, on direct marketing and kind of how that's really taken off across kind of the meat industry in general. And a lot of your focus was on kind of that carcass quality and what producers can expect on the processing side of things. So I guess big takeaway from your portion, what is it that producers need to keep in mind when looking at carcass quality and direct marketing?
So when it comes to the marketing side of it, the producers are going to need to make sure that they are taking their animals to a plant that has the proper inspection status based on what they're trying to do, whether that's a custom exempt plant or if they need to be at a federally or state inspected facility. So doing that research and making sure that they're having the appropriate inspection based on the type of marketing that they're going to want to do is extremely important for them.
Yeah, and can you elaborate a little bit on the difference between state and federally inspected?
Sure, state and federal inspection, there's a lot of similarities there. So the federal inspection is what everybody would think of as the USDA inspected product. But there's also 27 states that have their own meat inspection services, and South Dakota is one of them. And basically what it means is that the South Dakota has an inspection status that is equal to or stricter than the federal regulation, and it's overseen by the state government. The big difference that you're going to see between those two types of inspection is that federally inspected meat can be sold across state lines and exported. State inspected meat has to be sold within the borders of the state that it was inspected in.
Okay, that's good to know. So then you talked a lot this morning about kind of estimating our yields and the amount of meat products to expect. Can you talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, so when it comes to the overall yield, a lot of people think about, you know, this beef animal is such a large animal, if it's 1,400 pounds, let's say, and they'll get about 400 pounds of meat back. And a lot of people get concerned thinking that, you know, something was awry and some of their meat ended up disappearing. And really that's not the case. There's a lot of different factors that go into how much product they're going to get. From the carcass standpoint, how you want the meat cut is going to be a big player in how much product that you're going to get back. If you want boneless cuts, you're going to be losing a lot of that weight that you would have gotten, you know, with a T-bone, you're going to have that bone in there. But if you're getting strip steaks and tenderloins instead, you're going to be losing that weight. So overall, you could be getting less pounds of product back, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily disappeared or gone, getting sold somewhere else.
Right. So what can a producer do to kind of help boost their yields before they hit the slaughter facilities?
So when it comes to overall boosting their yields, I guess the biggest thing that they're going to be looking at is the factors that impact their dressing percentage, which is basically how much of the percentage of the carcass, live animal weight that's going to stay with the carcass. And to get a really good idea of that, things like holding the animal off feed before you weigh them that last time to get a true idea of what that animal weighs and you're not weighing the feed that they just ate. And also, you know, making sure that the animal is clean, you know, it's got a clean hide so that weight's not going to be coming off as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked a little bit about the aging process too. What are the types of aging and how does that influence your end product?
So aging is extremely important for meat processing because it's going to impart a little bit of flavor and it's also going to be important for tenderness development. And there's two different types of aging that we generally see. Most meat in commerce today is going to be wet aged, which is in that vacuum seal bag, and the meat just stays at a refrigerated temperature until it's either frozen or cooked. Dry aging is basically instead of packaging it right away, they allow the meat to kind of be out to the air, and the meat dries out a little bit and actually concentrates that flavor. So you can have a little bit of differences in flavor between those two. And also when you're dry aging something, having that moisture evaporating, you're also going to see a slight decrease in your yield as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought you made a really good point this morning about how we really need to be transparent with our consumers and what they're getting. And even though to us, what may seem like common sense isn't always common sense to our consumers. Can you explain a little bit about the importance of making sure that our consumers know exactly what the cuts are and what they will be getting?
Sure, there's a couple different universities that have put out really good infographics on, the types of meat to expect. But some points to hit with your customers would be that you're not necessarily going to get all of the cuts that you generally would expect. A T-bone is made up of the same cuts as a tenderloin and a New York strip, so you have to make a decision which ones you want. And also knowing that sometimes the meat that comes from smaller processors is cut a little bit different than what you would see in the grocery store. So, having those conversations to let them know that, it is the correct piece of meat, but it may just look a little bit different, and kind of preparing them for those types of scenarios. And then also, if somebody's new to buying an entire side of beef, they may not realize that you can't make the entire carcass into steaks, ribeyes and T-bones, because that only makes up about 20% of the carcass. So there's an entire 80% that still you need to do something with. It's going to be your ground products. It could be roasts, anything like that. So managing those expectations so they know exactly what they're going to be getting is crucial for that producer-consumer relations.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and Dr. Blair also kind of alluded to some upcoming SDSU programming. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing on the direct marketing side?
Sure. So we have a program called Beef 2020, and it's a program that's 3 days in January. And we take producers all the way through talking about management decisions and how that can impact carcass yields, and also getting into those conversations to have with the consumers. So, everything that we talked about today, we get into in a lot more depth during that program. So I would really highly recommend it for anybody looking at direct marketing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bakker.
Thank you.